Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Hey, I'm Randy Davis. Welcome back to Faith in Your Recovery. We're glad you joined us. Our guest today is Josh Richards. We spoke to Josh in our last episode, but we kind of made it a cliffhanger. We left it between the dark and the light to where he's about to step. We heard of his multiple losses in a short period of time, his turning to drugs to help deal with that, not caring about tomorrow, not caring about anything other than that next moment, that next party. Well, we're going to find out that care has changed in a very passionate and compassionate type way. Josh, give us just a quick overview of what we shared with the folks in that last episode, and then we'll start to move forward. So take about the first 5 minutes here, and I know it's impossible, but sum up your story.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Panama City, Florida, and grew up kind of on the outskirts of Panama City, on the city side and in the countryside of Panama City, Florida. And my dad raised mules and grew up with, kind of not a farm life, but a simple life background. And, there's we had pear trees and fruit trees, and we really just lived a simple, beautiful life in Florida. And it was I was uprooted at 13 and moved to right outside of the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and I thought my life was over, Randy. I thought it was just absolutely just destroyed. But when I moved up here, it was like having a new lease on life. I met really good friends, and we ran the countryside together in my early teenage years from 13 to 16. I enjoyed hunting and fishing and stuff up here, and I worked as a trail guide at a horse riding stables. And then I lost my father at age 16. Started with divorce from my mother and father when I was 14, and then 2 years later, lost my father to suicide, and then my grandmother shortly after that, followed by my grandfather not too long after that. Then I was kind of taken under. The wing of another fellow who ran a sheetrock and painting company, who put me to work and kind of stepped in to be a fatherly figure in my life, and took me under his wing, taught me some unbelievable skills and attributes that how to be a leader, how to do sheetrock, how to paint, how to make money for myself if I need to. And he just really kind of taught me how. He was just a father figure that taught me how to be a man. And then he was killed right in front of me on a motorcycle when I was 22. So I knew him, had him in my life for about 4 years. And then he was killed also. And I just experienced a lot of heartache in my life. When I lost my grandfather, I was already doing drugs, smoking weed, doing, ecstasy and cocaine and stuff. And it everybody in the family knew it. And even though I was trying to lie about it as much as I could and keep it hidden, they knew what I was doing, and they knew I was partying too much. Yeah, they knew I was partying too much, but I told my grandfather on his deathbed that I was going to be okay and that everything was going to be fine, and I was going to get my act together. And so I just kept that on the forefront of my mind the whole time I was going through that, and that's where we left off, I think. So we can pick up right there if you want to.
Hey, that's a great place, but I want to remind the folks, because I failed to in that intro, that your stage name, they may be even more familiar with it, some of them, than your real name is Josh Richards, Redeemed. And before we're done, we'll tell you, if you have any question where they came from, how that came about.
Yes, sir.
But now, you said some of your last words to your grandfather were, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you said it with a sense of confidence when it was a pretty dark time in your life, a pretty hazy time, as
Yes.
you called it even.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and start stepping up that ladder to a new life and a new you and becoming redeemed. Let's tell the folks about that.
Yes. So I really thought I was going to be okay, Randy. I thought I was going to be doing really, really good. I thought everything was going to be fine. I thought everything was going to be okay. I thought that everything was going to move in the right direction and I was going to get off the drugs. I was going to get everything changed in my life. And I thought that everything was going to be really, really good. But what happened was I
Sure.
actually ended up going further down the rabbit hole than I ever could have dreamed. I ended up going down an even darker path than what I ever could have imagined.
What what did that path look like? What kind of places did it take you?
Well,
Uh,
when I got the great sum of money from my father's death and from the insurance money, I didn't, like I said in the last episode, I didn't know how to handle it. So I always say that I met the right people at the wrong time and the wrong people at the right time. They showed me how to use that money in the worst way possible. You know, I got into drugs even heavier than what I thought, and even heavier drugs. So I was already using ecstasy and cocaine, but then I was introduced to opioids and narcotics were even more dangerous than the ones I was already on. At a very young age, I would say the age of 25, I took my first heroin hit of heroin that was in a powder form. Um, and I didn't like it at all. Uh, I swore I would never do it again, kind of thing. Like, oh man, I didn't like that at all. It made me feel nasty. Maybe I didn't like it at all. But the opiates were just kind of a lighter form of that. So once I lost the guy who taught me how to do sheetrock, Herb. Once I had lost Herb, and he had really kind of faded out of my memory because I had tried to push all that out. At this point, I was doing so many drugs. I was trying to push everything that had happened to me out. I was trying to completely phase it out of my mind. I didn't even want to think about it anymore. So I was trying any drug that anybody would let me have that I could get my hands on, and had a job and still had money. So had no problem ever getting it or being broke. I always had it because I was still a functioning addict at this point. And then in 2010, I was at a bar one night shooting pool in a pool tournament, completely high, just tore up, and in walked the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I hadn't even talked to her yet, but the moment I seen her come through the door, I knew that she was going to play a significant role in my life. And so I went over and talked to her, and at first she didn't want anything to do with me. She didn't want me to be, she didn't want to be my girlfriend. She's like, I'll shoot pool with you, and that's about it. But I never gave up. I never gave up on her. And a few months into our friendship, she decided to give me a shot. And what do I do to this beautiful girl? I decide, well, I'm going to bring you down this rabbit hole with me. She had never really done drugs. She wasn't an addict at all. And I introduced her to opiates pretty much right when we met. And so we really started in this addiction. I was already deep into addiction, but I brought her into the addiction with me. And I took her down a rabbit hole that would put both of us in addiction for the next 6 years together. We met here in Tennessee. We moved down to Panama City, Florida, where I was from, because I thought, well, I've already burned enough bridges up here now that I've been in drugs for several years, and I was kind of having a hard time making ends meet at this point. I was working job to job and just really just struggling every single day, and I was so
so
addicted
that
to
money was
opiates.
pretty well gone that you
Yeah.
had received as insurance.
Yes, sir. It was
Okay.
pretty well gone. I had pretty much spent all of it within, I would say, 6 years of having it. I got right at $100,000 and it was gone within 6 years.
Went through it in
Yeah, I
about
went through it.
6 years.
Yeah,
Did it
completely through
serve
it.
any positive purpose?
No, it fueled my addiction. It I used it a lot of it. I really just blew it all. If I saw
Okay.
something and I wanted it, I don't care if it was $1,000 or $5,000. I bought it. I just
Gotcha.
lived. I lived a lavish life with and a party life. Man, I had more friends than you could ever imagine when I had all that money and all the drugs. They were all there. But when the friends were gone and the drugs were gone, everything else was just it was just me.
Everything else went with it.
Everything else went with it. Yeah, when the money was gone and the drugs were gone, I found myself shooting pool at a little bitty bar on the side of the road, and like I said, in walked the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And so I really tried to. I was trying to replace all the sadness with maybe a relationship can help me with this sadness and this pain and this heartache. But what I ended up doing was bringing her down with me, and we moved to Florida together. And man, when we moved to Florida because we thought, okay, we'll move down there, we'll get clean, everything will be great, and I'm gonna be down there with family, and I'm gonna be down there with people that I knew growing up, and everything's just gonna be awesome when we get to Panama City. Well, we were wrong. It was more accessible. The drugs were more accessible in Panama City on the beach. We moved to the beach. Everyone that I had known my entire life was grown with either families or they were partying too. My family, all my cousins were grown and families, and some of them didn't live there anymore. And so it wasn't what I expected when I moved back. And so we didn't go down there to get so we went down there thinking we could get sober, but we were right in the middle of addiction, and we were right in the middle of some of the biggest drug supplies in the US, and that was Panama City Beach. And we just went on a tear through there. Man, we
So,
got on everything.
a different location, same party.
Same problem, same party, different location. Matter of fact, it was more available. I mean, if you couldn't find it someplace, you just make a phone call somewhere else and it was there. And
Yeah.
we ended up getting tied into some really, really bad people, and we ended up starting to sell pills uh and really started to do more drugs than I'd ever really done. I'd always dabbled and partied on the weekends, but I worked during the week. When I got to Panama City, it got so bad that I quit my job and I just wanted to do that. I wanted to get high and do drugs and sell drugs all day. That's all I wanted to do. I thought I was going to
So,
be, it's all I was going to be.
how much incarceration was involved during your addiction?
So this is how you know the Lord has his hand in it, because Randy, I've never been to jail for narcotics.
You've never been
I've never been to jail for our
with
narcotics. I have been pulled over countless times with narcotics in the car. I've been pulled over countless times with several pounds of marijuana in the car and a lot of money. And I've been pulled over under the influence, and they always let me go. And there were times when I knew I was going to jail. There ain't no way I'm not going to jail. I've already texted my girlfriend at the time, and Nikki here, who is my wife now. I'd already texted her and said, "Hey, I'm going to jail. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts." And then a few minutes later, I call her and say, "They let me go. I'm on my way home. I still got all the dope in the car." And it was just, it was I think the Lord knew I couldn't handle jail, Randy. I think the Lord knew that my heart was too big. And like I said in the last episode, I didn't like people yelling at me. I was a crybaby when I was a kid. And I think the Lord knew that jail was not. Now I have been to jail, but it was for never for narcotics. It was always just my own stupidity.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's uh that's a shocker to me,
It's a
okay?
shocker
As
to
I
me,
heard
Randy. I think
and
back on it now, and I'm like, man, that night I got pulled over I got pulled over and had a heavy amount of drugs in the car, and not just one type of drug, but several different types of drugs, and
so
was a
you could
we got in
easily
that, yeah.
you could easily still be in
Oh,
jail.
Randy, there was
Have
I can tell you one time for sure that I would still be in jail. We had an ounce of cocaine in the car and 100 pills. We got into a head-on crash, totaled the car. because I was so inebriated that I pulled the emergency brake in the middle of the intersection because the car slammed on his brakes in front of me. And instead of hitting the brakes with my feet, I pulled the emergency brake, which sent us into a 360 spin. And we hit a Dodge Ram head on, me and my wife, completely demolished the front of the car. The drugs were in the car. I had somebody in the back seat who had a bunch of cocaine on them. They took off running from the accident. And my wife was, she had all the pills on her, and she, when they set her down on the curb, she put them in the storm drain. And it was just, the Lord just got us out. He got me out of so much trouble that I had put myself into.
So, when did you first recognize his presence? Whether you at that time referred to him as your higher power, whatever it may have been, but what was that moment where you go, wow? And you know, I can remember from the other episodes you talked about having grown up in church, going with your grandparents, being involved. How did he reconnect with you and you with him?
Well, after so many years of addiction, there was a time where my wife and I were down in Florida. We were living in a very rundown hotel, paying day by day to live there, stealing stuff so we could eat. She would drop me off at a store. I'd go in, steal enough food for us to eat for the night, and then I would get, run out. And we were just so lost in addiction. We had such bad habits. Like it was awful, the things that we would do to get to feed our addiction. And so one night I told her, I said, babe, I said, I think I've done too much. Please check on me to see if I'm breathing. I don't know if I'm going to wake up. I've done too much. Well, I passed out, and she said the Lord spoke to her right then and said, call your mom and tell her to come get y'all. So she called her mom back up here in Tennessee and said, Mom, we're either going to be dead or in jail. And I'm not talking about months from now. I'm talking about real soon. Josh is passed out. I don't even know if he's going to wake up. Like, I need you to come. I need you to come and get us. So her mother came down the very next morning. She left that next morning, a couple hours later, and drove down and picked us up. And I remember looking out the back window as we drove away from that hotel, and I thought, thank you, Jesus, I'm never going to have to go through this again. And you would have thought that would have changed, that I would have been, okay, I'm out of there. We're going back to Tennessee. We're going to get clean. We're going to end this. But we came right back up to Tennessee and got right back into addiction again. And hid it from our family at this point. We were hiding it from our family. We were supposed to be doing good and supposed to be walking a straight and narrow. And I had a job and she had a job, and we got, we were like, what is a drug that we can do where nobody will know, because everybody knows what we look like when we were on opiates because of the way we carried ourselves the last 6 years. So what are we going to do? Well, we were introduced to meth for the first time. We could do just a little bit of meth and we could hide it. And so we stayed with her mother for quite a while until we convinced them that we were okay to get on our own and get us a place. And so we got us a place, and we were right back in addiction again. And I believe it was 2016, Gatlinburg caught on fire. And her and I had just done a bunch of meth that afternoon, and the Gatlinburg fires happened. And we went up to watch the fire from the road, and the mountains were just burning. I mean, the fire was roaring over these mountains, and we were really close to this one mountain peak where the fire come up over it. And I was standing in the parking lot, and I had not been in church in years and years and years. I hadn't talked to God or prayed to God in years. And I used to ask God to help me, like, Lord, help me make it through the night, or Lord, please help this guy not to shoot me when he finds out that I robbed him. And like, I would call on God when I needed him, but
Desperation.
it wasn't for reaching out to him. I was just calling him to help me out of a stupid situation I put myself
Sure.
in. So we're standing there watching the fire, and I heard the audible voice of God. I had never heard his voice before. And as I watched that fire come over the mountain, I could feel the heat off of it. And I heard the Lord say, is this how you want to spend eternity? Is this how you want to spend eternity? And I hit my knees right there in that parking lot on that asphalt parking lot, and I begged him to save me. I swore I would never do drugs again. I would never put myself in those situations ever again if he would save me. My sister-in-law, Tanisha, had been asking me for several weeks to go to church with her. And so several months before, she had asked us and we had always said no. So she quit asking us. And I called her and said, hey, is that invitation still open to go to church with you? She said, absolutely. So my wife and I went to church with her, ended up giving our lives to the Lord fully, and really getting on the road to recovery. uh that recovery was not it was great, but it was still somewhat of a lie, Randy, because even though I had given my life to the Lord and I was in recovery and I wasn't doing opiates anymore or meth anymore or any hard drugs anymore, I was still smoking weed. I was still getting high every single day, and I justified it by, well, the Lord put it here, it's natural, and they've been using it for thousands of years, and I justified it because it made me feel good. Um, and that continued all the way up until about 10 months ago. I was in church, been in church fully for, so let me back up just a second. We went to that church for about two and a half years, and then we moved and the church moved. And so we moved to the opposite side of town, and my wife started going to a new church, same pastor, but I decided I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to go. There was some church hurt, I guess you would call it, that was there for me, and I wasn't going to go to church. And so I wasn't straddling the fence. I just kind of slipped back into not caring about the church or how my life went. I was working. I had a good job. I was content. I was playing video games all the time and working, and I had a good life now. So I
You
had
didn't
forgotten about
need
the Lord.
anything. There
I
was
didn't
no
need anything.
desperation at
No,
this point.
no, everything was good and my life was good
Look
again. And
at
so I
me.
got complacent. And I got still, I was just kind of stagnant. I wasn't doing the drugs and doing the wrong things and that I was doing before, but I was, living a lie. And like I was still doing, still smoking weed. My grandbaby had been born. He was several years old. He was 3 years old at the time. And that was, that was one of the other times that I truly called on God and was like, Lord, help him. He was born with the umbilical cord around his neck and he wasn't breathing. He was lifeless when he was born, and I watched the Lord fully heal him. They said that he might have to be in the hospital for several months, and he may always have to have a feeding tube. And there were all these things that they had said, and I hit my knees in that hospital and I prayed, God, please, please let him be okay. Like let him. And they called us the next day and was like, hey, you can come see him. He's doing great. He's eating from a bottle. And so the Lord was showing me along the way, hey, I'm still here. But because of my stubbornness and all the stuff that I'd experienced early in my life, I was still shooing the Lord away. I was still pushing him away. I wasn't.
So, where along this journey did you decide, or did God impress upon your heart that you needed to serve Him through music? How did that come about? Because I want to
So,
get a couple questions in there
yeah.
before we run out of time.
So, whenever I'd always had a love for music, I have always been, had an ear for it and just really loved to sing. And my uncles play music, and I'd always been around music. And I thought I was going to be this really awesome rapper when I was in addiction and I was young, and I loved, rapping and freestyling. And I was listening to rap music from, the early 90s all the way through, you know, it's still listen to rap music. I just listen to Christian rap now, but I always had this dream of being a rapper. And I was pretty good at it. And so I tried to do it with the secular music, and I just never could make anything of it. I never could make it work. My heart wasn't in it. I would rather be doing drugs than doing music, and I would go to shows and be so inebriated, or something would happen, and it just didn't work out for me. And so I put the music down. I was like, this ain't for me. I'm not gonna make music anymore. Like, this is just not what it is. And so, like I said, I was content. I was working and just had a decent life, and everything was going good. And then I started going to church. I was out of church for several years. Walked by my wife's closet one night, and she was in there praying. And she wasn't praying for what I thought she was going to be praying for. She was praying that her husband would go to church with her. And she had no idea that I had heard her. And I thought, man, what a bad husband I've been. You know, she's in here praying. She could be praying for anything in the world, and she's praying for me to go to church with her. Well, I'm going to go to church with her. I'm not going to go to the altar, though. I'm just going to go to church, and I'm going to sit with her, and I'm just going to be a good husband. Well, that Sunday I went to church with her, and she was so happy that morning. I got up. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to go to church with you." And she was just so happy. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm not going to the altar. Like, I'm just going to show you that I'm a good husband. I heard you praying and you don't know it. And I'm going to slide on in there and make you feel good. Well, that's where I was wrong. And the Lord knew what he was doing, because I almost knocked her over trying to get to that altar that morning. I hit my knees so hard I had carpet burn on them. And I cried out to him, and I told him how sorry I was for leaving him again. All the times that he saved me and all the times that he pulled me out of the dark, I always went back and done things. And then even when he had got me out of addiction and got me sober, I was still smoking weed, and I was still not giving him the time that he deserves from me. And I was still just giving the world Josh and not giving it to the Lord. And so that morning I made a decision. I was like, all right, I'm going to start coming to church, and I'm going to start doing right. But I was still smoking weed. I was still burning down on the way to church and burning home on the way to church. I would smoke. If I had a chance, I was smoking. And I started singing in the worship band, and I would come to church and be blistered and go to worship night and just sing my heart out for the Lord and just love it. I would just sing all those songs to him, and I always told myself I wasn't feeling conviction, but I was feeling conviction over the weed, even though I was up there worshiping him. And I'm so thankful to be a part of to be in the same family as a recovery group up here called the Fountain of Hope. They take men, they have a men's house, two men's houses, and it's a faith-based program, 12-month program, and they help to rehabilitate, rebuild through Christ. And I was up there singing to these guys. Half the church is full of these recovery guys, and I'm singing to them, and what they're worshiping, and they're telling me, "Man, we love to hear you sing. Man, we just love to hear you sing, and you're such an inspiration to us, man. And we've heard some of your story." And then I would leave the church and spark up a joint on the way home. And one night, I was asleep, and I had this dream, and it was so real and that's why I say I was asleep and I had this dream, because it was so real. I thought I was awake and that the Lord was really talking to me. And he said, "Josh, how many times are you going to make me reach out to you before you really give yourself to me?" And he said to me, "If you will lay the weed down and fully surrender, I will restore something in you that you never thought possible." And I woke up and it was so real, but I brushed it off. I was like, that was a dream. I brushed it off. 2 nights later, we had a rap concert at our church, and Clean Slate walked in. I had never met him. I had never heard his music. I had heard a couple of the artists that he was affiliated with, and they told me he was coming. So I looked up some of his songs, and I was like, "Oh man, I like that. Christian hip hop's kind of corny, but I like that. That's pretty good." And so I sang on that worship night, and at the end of the night, he walked up to me and he was like, "Hey man, did you used to rap or sing or anything?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I used to try to rap and try to sing." I said, "I just sing for the Lord now in the worship group." And he was like, "Man, I've been sitting back there all night." And he said, "And the Lord's telling me to make music with you." And I was like, "Nah, not me, bud. He taught you mistaken. That's not it. That's not for me. I'm not making music no more. I don't make music anymore. And he was like, no, man, he's really telling me to make music, and I got a beat for you, man. I'm gonna find a beat and I'm gonna send it to you. I was like, all right, man, I'll think about it. So like a day went by and he calls me back and he sends me this beat and he's like, man, check this beat out. He said, you remind me of Jelly Roll the way you sing. He's like, and I got this Jelly Roll type beat that I have that I think you'd be really good on with me. He's like, let's do it. And I was like, man, I don't know. And so that night I was on my way home from church and I was thinking to myself, and it hit me like somebody slapped me upside the face. Hey, big dummy, your dream said the
The
Lord was going to
dream.
restore something for you that you loved that you never thought possible. And I was like, and it was like the Lord filled me up right then, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I knew that this was the time for me to fully surrender, that this was the time for me to fully give up and for me to fully, it was a time for me to fully give everything to him. And it was that moment that I decided, okay, I'm really going to give my life to the Lord. So I came home. It was late. I was in my little smoke room, and I've got a trash bag and I'm just throwing stuff in the trash bag. And my wife comes in. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with the weed. I'm done with everything. I'm done with me. I'm done. I'm giving my life to the Lord." And I threw everything in that trash bag and I got rid of it. And I did the song with Clean Slate. And when I recorded it and it came back, I was amazed. I couldn't believe that I had written something that glorified the Lord like that, and that sounded the way it sounded. And the song is called "Run to You." And Mallory, Slate's wife, was blessed us both when she got on the track, and it's just this really intimate track about running to the Lord. And it's like, because the moment that I decided that I wanted to that I wanted a relationship with Christ, I kept hearing people say, well, you're going to be on this walk with the Lord now. You know, you're on your walk with the Lord now. But I didn't want to walk with him. I wanted to run with him. I wanted to run
Right,
to
I
him.
could hear that
Yeah.
coming.
So I wanted to run with him and run to him. So I wrote the song called "Run to You." And I sent it to Slate. And he was like, bro, you've been holding that in for all this time? And I was like, yeah, man. And the song is amazing. It's done really well on YouTube, and it's something that started a spark in me that I never knew was possible. The Lord put something back. He gave me back something that I thought never possible. He restored it in me, and now he's like, I'm going to use you to tell your testimony. I'm going to use you to make this music. You're going to make the music that I want you to make. So when I write a song, I open my Bible, get into it, me and the Lord get into a scripture together. And then I'm like, all right, Lord, let's write this song. And then I put the beat on and me and him go to work. And it wasn't until like the second or third song that I wrote that I realized, like, man, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. Cause I still had some doubts. You know, I was
Sure.
completely freshly clean, you know, no drugs in my system for the first time since I was 15 years old, completely sober, a new outlook on life, a beautiful wife, a amazing daughter and grandson that are just a lot of my life. And here I am. I thought everything was great. And now the Lord has given me back this gift of music and told me he's going to use me. And what I thought I was happy, now I'm unbelievably happy. Now I'm walking with the Lord every day. And it's just been an amazing journey to where I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, when my dad's death 25 years ago, to where we are now, where I use that story and I get on stage and I say, I'm thankful my father committed suicide. I'm thankful that I was an opiate addict, because now I can talk about suicide with people who have gone through suicide and I can help them. And now I can talk to the opiate addict who thinks they can't get off drugs and that
Yeah.
they'll never have a life. I can talk to them. I can talk to the person who thinks that weed is just a plant that the Lord put here. Well, in one of my songs, I say, you know, the Lord put it on this earth but he also made the fruit, and the devil made Eve bite it first. You know, there's people will cherry pick the Bible and pull things out to make themselves feel better,
Absolutely.
to justify and for justification to make themselves feel better. But when you do that, you turn it back to me. That's
Yeah.
justifying me. That's justifying what you're doing is
You
okay.
want to keep
When
comfortable. We all
yeah,
want to
yeah, you
stay
can.
comfortable. And God's word is not written to make us comfortable.
No, it sure isn't.
Josh, go ahead and remind the folks who maybe haven't had the chance yet to listen to episode 1 where your stage name Redeemed comes from and why you chose it.
Well, when I started to walk with the Lord and then I started running with him, I really got in the word and I started reading the Bible. And when I came across this verse, just sank into my heart. And it's Ephesians 1:7, and it says, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace." And my favorite song, that's a Christian worship song, is "I Thank God." And it's because he says, he picked me up and he changed my name. Forever free, I am not the same. And he changed my name. It was time for him to change my name. And in that verse, I thought, man, that's all my story is a redemption story. I have been redeemed. I did go
Amen.
through heartache. I did go through pain. But through it all, the Lord never wavered. He never left me. And he changed my name. And that is
I
redeemed.
have got a question.
Okay?
Explain what you believe the power of music is in recovery. Why is music important to God? Why does it work in a healing, redeeming way?
Well, when you start a relationship with the Lord, you can't start that relationship without being able to relate. And so when you hear music, your body and mind take you to a place of whatever that music is talking about and whatever that music makes you feel. So if you're listening to music that glorifies gang violence, or you're listening to music that talking about dirt roads and being in the country, the way our minds as human works, in my opinion, is when we hear those things and we get taken to that place, we're taken to that place with music that puts us it's almost like a movie scene. When we're listening to those words, we sink in and we go to those places of what's going on. So when you're talking about Christian music and recovery and music in general, the way it helps heal us is it takes us to that special place. And when you're talking about Christian music in general, it takes us to that space of the special place of being with the Lord. And what he does is exactly what Ephesians 1:7 says. In him we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. And that's what he does through the music, is he lets
Amen.
us relate so that we can be in that relationship with him.
Music transgresses, nah, it's not the word I want, whatever, but it can cross all lines,
It sure
even when
can.
we don't understand the words. Man, that sound can speak to our heart.
Absolutely.
I'm 73 years old, Josh. I've got a few years on you. I've got to admit, I am not the kind you're going to find at a lot of hip hop concerts
Right.
for the sake of the music. Okay,
Right.
I mean it's a different genre.
Absolutely.
I remember when Elvis was on the stage and what a hubbub he created.
Yeah.
But I have gotten to know enough of you hip hop artists. I'd be there just to see and hear your story. You guys have a camaraderie, a closeness, a support of each other I don't always see in other areas of life. And you're in it together. You've mentioned, I don't know how many other hip hop artists here during this interview and how you guys have come together and how you've worked together. But it's all for the same reason. That's what it's about. I hope the church can get a hold of that one of these days. I don't that denominational name doesn't mean anything to me. I want to know if you're about God inside that building. And if
That's
you
right.
are and you're celebrating Christ, we've got reason to connect.
That's it.
So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sending us our closing song that we'll play here in just a minute. Tell the folks what the name of that song is. Give them just a quick background.
Well, the name of the song is called Life's Hard. It's by myself and another artist who, and when you were kind of saying a second ago, we are on the same camaraderie and on the same page, and we all do Bible studies together, and we don't just do music together for the Lord, we do life for the Lord together, and we're trying to build His
Amen.
kingdom, and that's what it's about, is trying to build the Lord's kingdom, and that's what we do together as artists, and we are Christian hip hop artists, and so Joe Nestor and myself, we came together, and we built this beautiful track. That glorifies the Lord. It's called Life's Hard, and it's about the death of my father and the death of his mother, the struggles we had along the way in dealing and coping with that, and how the Lord pulled us out, and how no matter what, we can always lean on the name of Jesus, and how Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And as long as you put your faith in Him and your love in Him, He will cover you with love, and He will change your life forever.
You know what? I hear you talk about how you guys are in this together for the sake of building the kingdom. I think you've got that sheetrock ready to go when it comes for that.
Yes, sir.
You're doing it through your
Yes,
music, your love. God
Yes,
bless
sir.
you. Thank
God bless
you.
you
And
too,
to
Randy.
you
Thank you
folks
so
who are
much for this
listening
opportunity.
in. Yeah, continue to celebrate what Christ is doing. Continue to tune in and turn on to what we've got to share. We look
Amen.
forward to that. God bless.
God bless. Thank you so much, Randy.
Once upon a time there was a rolling stone who thought he had the whole world in his hands. With nowhere to go and no place to call home, he had a tendency to roll with the wind. 'Cause since the loss of his mother, his life went in the gutter and nothing's ever made any sense. Doing drugs to escape all the heartache and pain, causing chaos everywhere that he went. When the long arm of the law came around, they booked that boy and sat him down, put him on a bus and shipped him on up the road. Yeah, to a 6x9 across county lines in the middle of a field to do his time. Every day he was getting closer to the end of his rope. Yeah, by God, life's hard, and you can tell by the way that we're wearing our scars. When everyone is gone and we don't have any friends, let me tell you that I know, man, we can't. He can take all the worries away when we don't understand, and all the trials of this life. Let me introduce you to Jesus Christ. Yeah, yeah. Let me introduce you to Jesus Christ. Yeah, yeah. Let me tell you a little story about a blue-eyed boy who thought the drugs were his only friend. He was masking the pain as he faded away, screwing up what little life that he had. Thought he was too far gone to call on God, and he was way too low to reach for the stars. But he called out his name and he met him right where he stands. Yeah, now there's a brand new man coming out of the water. Only the Lord knows where he's been. It's been a long, dark road since the death of his father on the streets in a life of sin. He's got the windows down and that old truck rolling. Yeah, he's back on the road again. With no rear view mirrors, only looking forward. Can't go back to where he's been.